Each day we began with a temple invocation and a prayer to Inanna. One morning I was chosen to read the prayer. As I stood facing the altar with the book in my hands and began to speak, I felt a voice speak through me. The words shifted around in my mouth. The emphasis changed. The places where the pauses arrived were not chosen by me, and I would have placed them elsewhere. I felt I was speaking through time, from an impossibly distant time, and that the words had a life in them, in this context that was beyond me, beyond my powers of interpretation or imagination. I felt they were subtly altering me, refining me as I spoke them, and that they retained a power that had not been diluted, merely laid aside for a few thousand years. From the fourth day, Ereshkigal was included in our prayer. As the days went by, she got louder and louder. We began to understand that Ereshkigal was the purpose of this whole journey. Ereshkigal was where we were headed, and it was Ereshkigal's story we were discovering as much as Inanna's. After 5 days, we spoke a prayer to Ereshkigal and included Inanna. It became clear the whole descent is in service to Ereshkigal. The myth is known as the descent of Inanna, but really it could, and perhaps should, be called the descent to Ereshkigal. We learnt this as we invoked Inanna into our lives, and our whole orientation became towards the dark one, Ereshkigal. We began as a temple of Inanna. We became a temple of Ereshkigal. After we had completed our journeys, we took on the title of priestesses of Inanna Ereshkigal, and that Ereshkigal's name came second did not imply she had the secondary role, but the underlying one. Each day, after we'd made our sacred adornments, we stood in meditation while one by one we descended through a symbolic gate. We crossed a line held by 2 women, one of whom removed an item from us that we had just made, a sacred ritual item. We spoke the ritual line of Inanna's, "What is this?" and received the unvarying answer, "Quiet, Inanna. The ways of the Underworld are perfect and may not be questioned." For 6 days in a row, I heard this spoken 20 times, one time each day for each woman. Not only that, I heard the voices of Inanna, her voices of outrage, shock, pride, fear, despair, dread, arrogance, beauty, power, hope and desperation, varying through the days and through the women. I heard them coming out of my own mouth. I heard them travelling into the underworld from where I stood in meditation, eyes closed on one or other side of the gate, waiting for each one of us to travel through. I was going to ride to travel safely through, but it wasn't safe. As we made each item of Inanna's regalia, we meditated on what it meant to us. Thus Inanna's crown, for one woman, might be her job, or her inspiration, or her achievements in her life, or her children. The breastplate might represent her security in the world, her beauty, or the love she felt for and received from others, her health. The beads might be her singing voice, the threads that tied her to friends and family, or her hopes for the future. Those voices I heard, voices cracking, shouting, whispering, disbelieving, shocked, appalled, they were the voices of women losing those things suddenly, unexpectedly. Her children, her future, her choices, her direction in life, her lover, her creativity, her health. My crown on the first day represented knowledge, and I felt untouchable when they removed it, that nothing could break me. The small strand of beads on the second day was my voice, but I never spoke much anyway, and I remained proud when they removed it. The third day's double strand of beads was my compassion, and I felt even further isolated, estranged, when I lost it. My breastplate on the fourth day represented my vulnerability, that which allowed me to take a lover, to show myself to another. and I felt only coldness when they lifted it from me. The 5th day's armband, I thought of it as my sexuality and my fertility, bound together in a twisting snake along my arm. I felt a long way down by then, and it was a quiet horror to have it removed. I cannot keep even that, my birthright as a woman. But I did not protest, other than in the ritual words. I remember I carried my measuring rod and line with a magnificent pride. It represented my pen, my words, the actual lived power of my writing. To me it was magical, and I gave it a name, which was, "My words are fire, are blood, are earth, are star." When they slid it upwards out of my hand, so simple, so fatal, I could hardly breathe, hardly speak. It had not occurred to me while I was making it, or carrying it, that I would lose it, or what that would mean. I had not even tried to hold on to it, to clutch at it. It was already gone by the time I thought of that. The words came from me distantly. "What is this?" And I heard, inevitably, "Quiet, Inanna. The ways of the underworld are perfect. They may not be questioned." And it goes on, but I just want to read to you the final part where we get to having gone through 7 of these days. And we do a ritual that lasts most of the night, where one by one we actually each go through the whole 7 gates, starting with all of our 7 items and losing them one by one in the night. And my turn came after midnight, and I'd been awake a long time. It had occurred to me, somewhat dimly through the fog that had descended, that the person behind all this, so to speak, was Ereshkigal, and that I was going to meet her. I went back and checked the myth. Certainly, Inanna met with Ereshkigal. She would be there. And I, in the guise of Inanna, I would be there. I could ask her what all this meant. I could hold her accountable for those actions and losses, and I intended to. I would demand an answer. I went through those gates full of purpose. The temple was dark, lit by candles. There was the sense of vague shapes of purpose moving around in the background. And there were 7 gates, shrouded in draperies, constructed in the hall. And at each one I was stopped. "What is this?" I asked at each gate. Disdainful, righteous, fearful, and each time I was answered with, "Quiet, Inanna. The ways of the underworld are perfect. They may not be questioned." On I swept, through gate after gate, knowing that I was going somewhere, imagining that the answers lay just ahead. I would ask Ereshkigal what it meant, why she was doing this. When they removed my robe at the last gate, I crawled through, naked and bowed low, as it says in the story. As I began to stand, I caught sight of Ereshkigal, distant on her throne, in the dim light, and I opened my mouth.